Hi, welcome to the first episode of The Kitchen Butcher. I just sold my butcher shop a few months ago and I actually miss it quite a bit. So I don't buy meat in the commercial chains, so I do my own fabricating, my own cutting at home. And today we're going to cut a prime top butt of sirloin beef. And out of this we're going to get steaks. I'm going to make a small roast as well. It's just me and my wife, so we have to proportion it accordingly. So let's just start trimming it. You can see that the piece of meat has a good cover of fat on it. Well, that's because it's prime. Now this meat is not box meat, it's hanging carcass, which means it just came from the farm a few days ago. It's not something that's been in a plastic bag for a long, long time. When something's in a plastic bag, if you can remember from biology class, it can become a giant petri dish. Any hole in that vacuum seal can make a very, very detrimental problem for you. So I prefer fresh meat. You should too. This is the hip sirloin, which is the last part of the loin of beef, the back of the animal, right before it goes into the hind leg, the round. Another name for it is the top butt. When you have a quality piece of meat such as this, you can actually feel the quality in the fat. That fat has a very high level of lanolin in it. It's very smooth and it's got a wonderful texture. Some people like to leave a little more fat on it, but I don't, because the meat itself has enough inherent fat in the grain. This little corner piece here, you can see it looks like a triangle, is actually the tip of the bottom round. And it's wonderful to make something called a short steak. What we're doing is we're actually seaming between the muscles. My beautiful wife is the camera person today. Remove that membrane with a minimal amount of meat loss. Okay, and we'll set this on the side and we'll continue trimming this. This is an old knife. This knife is a Victorinox. It's probably about 50 years old, but it's been with me a long time and I love it. Same people who make the Swiss Army knife. If you have a little grinder at home, you can save these little pieces, re-trim them and make your own hamburger. Or if you have a pet like we do, you can have a feast. Right here, there's a seam. Right down the center of the piece of meat, there's a seam there. We're going to cut there and separate this into two pieces. Because essentially what I'm going to do is make a roast out of this narrow portion. Now most people cook their meat 20 minutes to the pound, but that can be deceiving because the heat will penetrate depending on the density of the meat. So if you have a narrow piece of meat such as this, it'll probably take a lot less time. One of the great attributes about this particular cut is that it's tender and it's also lean, which is a hard combination to come by. Whenever you're broiling, it's a good idea to make your broiler red hot before you put the meat in. Because you really don't want to cook the meat, you want to broil it. You want to keep the flavor in, you don't want it to be cooked away. Okay, now we'll cut the short steaks. This also could turn into a roast just as it is. But I prefer this into steak. Okay, our last scale will stop right now. Okay, we finished cutting our steaks. And now we finish wrapping our steaks. It's very important when you wrap your product to use the right paper. This is a double laminated freezer wrap. It has a glossy side and it has a flat side. So you always put the glossy side on the meat to make a good seal. And when you wrap it, make sure you label it with your date and squeeze out as much air out of the package as possible so you're assured not to have freezer burn. Okay, now we'll take the remaining part of the top butt and we'll tie it into a small roast. Now if you remember, I mentioned that this will cook relatively quickly because it's narrow. Years ago when I started in the meat business, we'd take a piece of meat like this and we'd wrap it in coal fat. It's the fat around the loin of beef to protect it so it didn't dry out. But we can get around that just by not overcooking it. The purpose of the string is to give a little bit of rigidity and uniformity so it cooks a little bit more even. And when you slice it, it actually holds the meat in better place. Okay, we'll wrap this up, we'll label it, and we'll head for our freezer.